Sonia Di, we are live now, and
Okay.
I see Swapan.
So should we start off then?
Yes, please. I'll make you the host.
Okay.
We are live now.
Okay, fine. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Many of you might also be watching the live streaming that is going on YouTube right now. The occasion is very solemn, and the reason for our gathering on this virtual platform is so very unfortunate. We deeply mourn the untimely loss, not just of an incredibly brilliant and versatile mind, but also of the warmth, compassion, and geniality that Shopunda was always synonymous with. Shopunda has touched each of us present at this meeting in various ways, whether as a teacher, as a scholar, mentor, friend, or colleague. And on a personal note, I can say that I was fortunate to have known Shopunda from very close quarters, not only as a teacher, but also as a colleague. And I consider it a great privilege to have had him as my MPhil and PhD supervisor. So I have been able to imbibe not only, let us say, a bit of the scholarship that he stood for. And many of us amongst us, I have worked on Ben Jonson, and as I was thinking of what to say on regarding Shopunda, and it's very hard to bring forth adequate words to express my indebtedness to him. You will remember, in fact, that Ben Jonson's epitaph on his grave at Westminster Abbey simply reads, "Oh, rare Ben Jonson." And in fact, this was the phrase that was going about in my mind as I was thinking of Shopunda and of all the memories that I shared with him. And that same quality of singularity, I think, is what we would all agree as uniquely applicable to Shopunda. And it is difficult to match up to the absolute nonchalance with which he wore his intimidating scholarship, or as you will all admit, the razor sharp quality of his wit and his spontaneity. And there will never be another person like Shopunda. So thank you once again for being a part of this joint initiative by the English Department and the School of Cultural Texts and Records, Jadavpur University. I would now request all of you present to please share your memories of Shopunda as we try to remember him and pay homage to his departed soul. I believe that Shamantukda is with us, and I would request Shamantukda to please say a few words about Shopunda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. I really have no words to describe how I am feeling now. I mean, Shapunda's departure, I have lost a friend, philosopher, guide, someone who inspired me right from the time that I first met him as I think a second year undergraduate in the Department of English at Jadavpur University. I'm still to come to terms with the shock of this loss. 67 years is no age to go, and yet so much to contribute. Is one of the leading lights behind the School of Cultural Texts and Records, whose duty has been transferred onto my shoulders now. As for his scholarship in a vast range of subjects, ranging, it's almost impossible to list how much he knew about how many different kinds of things. He was a walking encyclopedia. I must have called him up several hundred times to ask him questions about everything from canonical literature to ephemera. And, he never once failed to deliver. On the rare occasions when he wasn't sure of a fact or of a detail, he would tell me, Samantha, I'll let you know later. And he invariably did. And that was, again, almost invariably within a few hours or at most a day from when I first bothered him with my queries. One other thing which I would like to mention very briefly, and I don't want to talk for very long, is the fact that Shapunda was that rare academic who did not shy away from taking on administrative responsibilities. As those of you who can see my video, you probably make out I'm in my office, my new office as co-vice chancellor of Jadavpur University. I think sort of thought that took place and responsibility. But Shapunda did not shy away from taking on administrative responsibilities at the School of Cultural Texts and Records, or in preparing Jadavpur's submission for the second round of NAC accreditation in 2008, in which he sort of took me under his wing, and I assisted him in that, or as Director General of the National Library, Secretary and Curator of the Victoria Memorial Hall, or indeed, in charge of the Indian Museum. And it's not just he just was a placeholder who just kind of went through the motions. He introduced far-reaching changes, digitizing the National Library's holdings, putting out on display a lot of the hidden treasures of the Victoria Memorial and so on. And it's so difficult for me to even try and express the immense debt of gratitude that I owe Shapunda. And so I will not even try. I can see a lot of my former teachers here, Sajidi, Priyaji, Malavika Di, and some of my present colleagues, all of whom are here. And I'm sure each one of us is feeling this profound loss and disorientation, I would say, because Shapunda was always just a WhatsApp message or a phone call away. I miss him even more now, perhaps, because of these onerous new responsibilities that have been forced to take on. And I'm sure I would have called him up to say, Shapunda, eta hoche, how do I deal with it? And he would have, laughed his laugh, and maybe with a lopsided grin, he would have told me, chinta korona, and then given me very practical, solid, sensible advice. I can't really go on anymore except to express my gratitude to the Department of English for having organized this. Thank you, everybody, and words fail me. I miss you, Shapunda. I miss you a lot. Sorry. That's all.
Thank you, Shamantokda. Could we please request Devashish Roy Chaudhary to please perform his song right now to set the mood for the occasion? Thank you.
শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে, আঘাত হয়ে দেখা দিল আগুন হয়ে, আগুন হয়ে জ্বলবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে। সাঙ্গ হলে মেঘের পালা, শুরু হবে বৃষ্টি ঢালা। সাঙ্গ হলে মেঘের পালা, শুরু হবে বৃষ্টি ঢালা। বরফ জমা সারা হলে নদী হয়ে, নদী হয়ে বলবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে। ফুরায় যা তাপ, ফুরায় শুধু চোখে, অন্ধকারের পেরিয়ে দুয়ার যায় চলে আলোকে। ফুরায় যা তাপ, ফুরায় শুধু চোখে, অন্ধকারের পেরিয়ে দুয়ার যায় চলে আলোকে। পুরাতনের হৃদয় টুটে আপনি নূতন উঠবে ফুটে। পুরাতনের হৃদয় টুটে আপনি নূতন উঠবে ফুটে। জীবনে খুব ফোটা হলে মরণে ফল, মরণে ফল করবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে, শেষ নাহি যে শেষ কথা কে বলবে।
Thank you, Debashista. May I now request Shukantoda to say a few words?
Thank you, Sonia. But what does one say about Chopin, and how does one sum him up in a few words? And maybe my only right to speak so early in today's proceedings may be the fact that I have known the people likely to be present today, of the 60 or 70 persons who have joined this virtual meeting. I probably the longest acquaintance, actually the longest relationship with Chopin, going back 49 years. We couldn't complete the half century when I had just joined Presidency College as a callow 22-year-old teacher, and Chopin and Shruti also, they were in the first year. And I remember, our Arun Babu, Professor Arun Kumar Dasgupta, telling me pretty early on, there's a boy in the first year you should look out for. His name is Chakravorty. He's somebody quite outstanding. You watch out, watch for him, pay some attention to him. And Arun Babu was always himself concerned because Chopin was at that time quite sort of deeply involved in the student politics of the time, and would draw him aside every now and then and say, Chopin, you're destroying your future in this way. Of course, as Arun Babu was the first to admit, Chopin's future was not destroyed. But I've been fortunate in that all my life, I've had this endless succession of outstanding students from whom I've learned so much. But there's really nobody from whom I've learned as much as Chopin. And in kinds of ways. Academically, of course. And I'll just say a word or two about that later on. But, more generally, Chopin a deep institutional commitment, for instance, but that, as Shamantak said, he took a great interest, great involvement in the affairs of the institution of Jadavpur University, which appeared in focus when he took charge of coordinating that visit in 2011, was it? I forget the year. But more generally, undertaking all kinds of responsibilities, quite often behind the scenes. And it was this part of his sort of versatile personality which showed to extraordinarily constructive advantage when he took over charge of the National Library, where among his many achievements, the one that we should all bear in mind most strongly is he effectively catapulted the National Library into the age. If he hadn't done it then, God knows who would have been the next person to come around to do it and who could have done it so effectively. His combination of academic insight with administrative ability. But beyond that, his general involvement with ethics, we cannot quite rid ourselves of the notion, despite so much evidence to the contrary, that scholarship somehow makes a person a better human being. And, well, Chopin was till last week, a living example of that. And now he will always be an inspiring example, I think, in our memory. Well, I don't want to continue like this. I'll just end up by talking about one particular aspect of our relationship, which maybe I was, again, fortunate enough to share with him beyond most others by virtue of a common academic interest we had, which was in editing, in textual studies, in bibliography, which is why, Chopin was among the most active of the small band of us who set up the School of Cultural Texts and Records around the year 2004, 2005, and of which, after the retirement of another Chopin, Professor Chopin Mojumdar, Chopin Chakravorty then became the joint director. And he was a tower of strength. The personal input and advice that I had from him over the years, well, there's no time to talk about that really. So let me just end by mentioning something that maybe would have been more fitly mentioned later on in this meeting, but obviously I cannot another chance to speak. So now, while we were in charge of the School of Cultural Texts and Records, Chopin organized that extraordinary exhibition on printing and publishing in Bengal in the ICCR exhibition gallery. I mean, organizing that exhibition was equivalent to writing a major book, let's say. Unfortunately, the physical records of that exhibition, the panels and so on, have now been lost. But other photographic and digital records remain, from which I know that already some of us are trying to reconstruct that exhibition. But that apart, Chopin and I had a plan which was to do something which, strange though it may seem, has never been done. The disappearing practice, once universal, now maybe Kolkata is its last remaining center on any scale. The practice of handset printing, handset composition and printing on hand-operated means. It's dying even here, but it's still alive. That process has never been adequately recorded in video form. And I, for a time, tried very hard to find the means to do that. We did not succeed. And quite literally, we did not find the means. We couldn't find anybody to give us the money. There are so many memorials one can set up for such a versatile person. But maybe one particularly fit memorial would be, if now, before it is too late, and in another 10 years, it will be too late, even in Kolkata, we would realize his unfulfilled dream in his memory of providing an adequate video record of what is, after all, this great institution of human civilization. With thought, let me leave you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukantoda. Shupriyadi, could we hear from you as well?
Thank you for asking me to speak. I feel actually that Malavika Di, Sajni Di should perhaps speak before me. But since I've been asked, instead of wasting time, I will come in at this point. Chopin joined presidency the year that I did my BA finals. So at that, this is 1972. So I didn't really know that batch particularly well. I'm not very sure that I have clear memories of that first year, which came in the year that we actually passed out of college. It contained Bhashyati, Chopin, and many other very brilliant students. But I met Chopin properly after I returned from Oxford in 1975. My brother Omlan was then absolutely full of this brilliant young seniors from college and the extraordinary wit, gaiety, intellect of Chopin. And he regaled us with stories of this adda that they would go to at the Gokhale Road house of Bhashyati. Presided these addas presided over by Bhashyati's father, and many other people whom we knew. I met Chopin himself, Bhashyati, who both came to our house many times and got to know them. They had then just started studying at Jadavpur University, where Malavika Di, Sajni Di were their teachers. They borrowed my books, take them along to class. Spencer, particularly, I remember Chopin borrowed my works of Edmund Spencer. And then I was actually even, I think I examined their MA final papers. Both incredibly brilliant pieces of writing, Bhashyati and Chopin. And I got to see that famous handwriting, the handwriting that Chopin said got him into trouble in his BA finals. He said that his paper really not being checked. That's why he did, his results were disastrous in the BA finals. That famous handwriting, Chopin used to joke that Omlan can imitate anybody, but he can't do mine. he had this celebrated, very difficult S. Chakravorty signature. Swapan became absolutely indispensable to our lives from that time, as a friend, as a peer. Later, when I joined Jadavpur University in 1995, Swapan joined about 4 or 5 months before me, because I found it difficult to get what's called release from my government job. I was then teaching at Presidency College. So it took me about 5 months walking, out and back from writers' buildings to get release. And meanwhile, Swapan had joined. And when I came in, which are the first wonderful place, I was sad to leave Presidency College. I was very sad to leave my college. But I think it was an extraordinary adventure for me, and actually a great blessing for me to join Jadavpur at that time, with Swapan as my close colleague and somebody who had joined just before me. We had extraordinary students, we had extraordinary colleagues. There was always excitement, new going on. There was a sense of the possibilities of research, which I don't think any other institution at that time had that kind of sense of the living importance of research. And Swapan, of course, embodied that urgency, that interest, that that vibrant sense of closeness to the life of the mind. The sense that, in fact, he embodied the life of the mind. Shortly after that, Swapan was to go abroad to do his deal. In fact, I visited Oxford at that time, and I remember, I'm not quite sure whether Swapan had arrived. I had been visiting Bhaswati in their flat. I think Swapan perhaps had not arrived at that time, but I heard great stories of his time at Oxford. Then he came back, of course, and we were colleagues for long years at Jadavpur. There's little to say to add to everyone's sense of what a wonderful colleague, what a brilliant mind Swapan was, incredible memory for scholarly details, how he could always give you the references, the details that you were looking for, and also start you off on new trains of thought, which was always important. Swapan, actually towards the end, when he was forgetting a few things, Swapan very irritated at the fact that he would forget his famous memory was not working as well as it had always had. I remember Swapan in so many contexts. Swapan and I went to Delhi to get this phase of the CAS program granted. The two of us went off to Delhi, made our pitch, which earlier, the first time, I had gone with Malavika and Joshadhara. The three of us had gone. Second time I went with Swapan. I went Swapan in Shivaji Banerjee Bandyopadhyay's house with Giorgio Ben, holding forth, unstoppably, until at last Moinak said, "Swapanda, ebare thamun." And Giorgio Agamben, obviously, looking on at this remarkable person. I think he had come to see Shivaji, but he saw Swapan, and Swapan, I think, was someone for whom he was really not prepared. I remember Swapan in context. I remember Swapan at home, in our the children, Shorjo and our son Siddhartha, in the reunion, Jadavpur University on the field, racing together. The Bihidda had organized some children's games, some races, and Pantu and Pico were very enthusiastically racing against each other. I remember, so many things about Swapan. It's difficult to put them all together. We cannot do without. I'd like to say particularly that I never attended, I was unable to attend the 3 farewells. Swapan was famous, and in which he took great pride. He was given his first farewell when he left Jadavpur to become Director General of the National Library, a second one when he came back to Jadavpur and left again to retire, then a third from Presidency University. When he left Presidency University, I remember Gayatri Chakravorty was a speaker on that occasion. And for each of these farewells, I received an invitation, and for a reason or another, I think I was abroad on each of these occasions, and I was unable to attend. And, you know, I wrote a note to the organizers saying that I think Swapan, I don't want to say farewell to Swapan, and therefore, you know, Providence has arranged in such a way that I don't have to attend his farewell. And that is actually as it should be. Swapan attended my farewell from Jadavpur. He spoke there. It is appropriate. He was younger to me only by 1 year, but you know, couple of years, 3 years in college terms. এটাই মানায় যে ছোটরা বড়দের ফেয়ারওয়েলে থাকবে, বড়রা ছোটদের ফেয়ারওয়েলে থাকাই ভালো। I not to be here at this farewell for Swapan, not to be here. I should not be here. I just feel like this occasion should never have come. I have to be here not at one of those tremendously funny, warm, vital farewells that he received from Jadavpur on 2 occasions, from Presidency University once, that I wasn't there for those and that I'm here for. There's something wrong. I feel very, very sad. But I remember him, and I will continue to do so in that warm and vital sense of joy and of the intellect that he always embodied. Thank you.
Thank you, Shupriya Di. Malavika Di.
Thank you, Sonia. It's very tough to be speaking at this moment. This is not how it should have been. Swapan was my student when I first started teaching at Jadavpur University. He was an MA student, and I remember him from that time very clearly because he was always full of the most, impossible questions and comments in class. And then, of course, he was my colleague at Jadavpur. Later, when I went to presidency, he was a member of the presidency mentor group. And with others in the mentor group, we worked closely as a team. And in a way, so that was a kind of trajectory of my relationship with Swapan. But through all of this, he always remained to me a close friend. So when in 2019, I was persuaded to take on the vice chancellorship at Ashoka, I phoned him and I said that Ashoka doesn't have the kind of library it needs to have. I want you to please come here as advisor and help build the Ashoka library. He did that. He joined in 2019, September, telling me, আপনি যতদিন আছেন আমি ততদিন আছি, তারপরে কিন্তু আমি ছেড়ে দেব। But that is not how it happened. So as the library advisor at Ashoka, he did, in his own individual style, he did meticulous work and of such high levels for the library, creating a library policy document, planning library acquisitions, and every single detail. We now have a new library building, and every nook and cranny, even the furniture. Swapan was very much engaged in planning. The day he went into hospital, that was the 1st of September, he sent me a WhatsApp saying, we had a meeting, library meeting that day on Zoom. So he sent me a WhatsApp saying, sorry, Malavika, I can't attend the meeting today. I'm going to hospital with Parshati for COVID. And I remember, I thought that he was going to visit someone, or they were going to visit someone. So I asked, who has COVID? And he said, both of us. And then a couple more messages from him about how they were, and Parshati was better, she was going home. And then the messages from him stopped, but I was in touch with Parshati almost every day. And about 10 days ago, Parshati sent me a message saying, I urgently need to speak to you. So I said, yes, I called her immediately. She said, last evening, Swapan insisted with the hospital that he have a video chat with me. And that video chat was to give me a message for you. And the message was, মালবিকা দিকে বলতে হবে আমি কিন্তু ভালো হয়ে যাব, যা যা প্ল্যান করেছি লাইব্রেরি সেগুলো সব করতে হবে. So that was his message about, I think 2 or 3 days before he went into ventilation. Because, okay, Swapan as one of my former students, former colleague, I've always loved. But since 2019, I have been constantly in touch with him. Where I'm sitting here in this office, the chair opposite is where he would have been sitting so often, having coffee and talking about multiple things. And the great thing about Swapan that, his scholarship, yes, his great intellect, yes, but his readiness to laugh and the way that he could make people laugh. What a wonderful human being he was. And I just do not have the words to express what it is that I think so many of us are feeling today. But it just seems wrong. It just doesn't seem right that I should be here at a memorial meeting for Swapan. It should have been the other way around. But even now, from time to time, and of course at Ashoka, he has won many friends, and everyone is coming around to talk to me about what has happened. But even now, devastated as I am, from time to time, I keep thinking, okay, so someone has said this. If Swapan were here, he would have said this. So, that is a voice that for me will never just go away. I think, for all of us, he's really and truly missed. And it doesn't seem real that he's not here. So thank you very much for asking me to speak. But, from 2019 September till this September, I have been talking to me every week about a variety of things, not just the library, but many other things about Ashoka where I wanted advice. I knew I could rely on him, so I would telephone him and ask him for advice. And now there's no one to turn to. So it just doesn't seem right, but there it is. So thank you for asking me to speak.
Thank you, Malavika Di. I think we have our Vice Chancellor with us, Professor Suranjan Das. Sir, could you kindly say a few words about Swapan?
Thank you. It is unbelievable that I have to attend a memorial meeting in favor of a very good friend, Swapan. Sudden death is always devastating. There is no chance to say goodbye. there is no chance to prepare yourself. Chopin's death was like this. I remember before I was made to take an extension of my present term as Vice Chancellor, I received a SMS from Chopin. The SMS was like this: সুরঞ্জন, তোকে তো আবার দায়িত্ব নিতে হলো, সাবধানে থাকিস, যাদবপুরের যে অবস্থা, শরীরের দিকে যত্ন নিস, ভালো থাকিস. It's a tragedy that I am still here. Chopin has left us. The cruel hand of death took him away suddenly. The memories of a real friend never fades away. And that remains true for my relationship with Chopin. Chopin was 1 year junior to me in presidency, and we had wonderful days at presidency during that time. Presidency was wonderful during that time. We participated in debates together. We participated in other cultural activities. We participated in a number of extracurricular activities. Then Chopin was my near contemporary at Oxford. And I still remember the wonderful evenings that we had in the pubs, the wonderful evenings that we had in Chopin's flat. And those recollections will never fade away from my memory. One striking point of Chopin is that he could combine in himself an intellectual expertise with his constant care for his friends and acquaintances. That I felt was striking about Chopin. And that will never fade away from my memory. I shan't be overstressing the point when I say that sometimes memories can be more powerful than current experiences. And surely my recollections of my fruitful friendship with Chopin will remain for me a source of sustenance. And let me end with a quote. And the quote runs as follows. I quote, "There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they have gone, the light remains. There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they have gone, the light remains." Unquote. Chopin was something like this. And I hope the English department will take the leadership to carry forward the rich legacy that he has left behind for Jadavpur University. Could I suggest to my colleagues in the English department that let them institute an annual memorial lecture in the memory of Chopin, and also to bring together his unpublished articles. The university will be very, very happy to provide all necessary support for this venture. I do hope the department will kindly consider this proposal. That will be one way of carrying forward the legacy that Chopin has left behind for Jadavpur University and the entire intellectual world, not only of Bengal, not only of India, but the world over. Thank you very much indeed. I thank the English department for organizing this memorial event and for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts about a friend who had been dear to me since 1972. I entered presidency in 1971, Chopin entered presidency in 1972. And since 1972, we had a very fruitful and enjoyable relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the English department will definitely work on the suggestion given by you. Thank you for coming. We have Shobhadi with us, and may I request Shobhadi to say a few words as well.
Shobhadi, please unmute your mic.
Shobhadi, you can't be heard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Now you can hear. Actually, I feel terribly shocked and disappointed at this news. Chopin was actually my student and later a colleague, and much younger to me. It is just impossible to think that I have to speak at a memorial meeting for Chopin. Well, people before me, they have all spoken about his intellect, his scholarship, his administrative qualities, and I feel particularly he was great as a human being, very kind-hearted and full of vitality. Actually, I still remember today, during our admission tests, the way he particularly regaled us with his jokes and tremendous sense of humor. He brought a fresh air to those meetings, which were very boring, correcting those scripts. I just again feel that Chopin left us just too early, and the Department of English has lost him when it needed his advice and help. And not only English department at Jadavpur, but the academic world of Calcutta, India, and the international world. Actually, I again feel that it is very sad, and I never could dream of this. And I only say that I feel, left out, and I miss him, and the department and the students. He was so student friendly. Will miss it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobhadi. We have Shoti Di with us. Shoti Di, আপনি কি কিছু বলবেন? Shoti Di? Okay. Anandada, would you want to say a few words?
Yes, Shruti is unable. I mean, should I go ahead, Sonia?
I think so. Maybe she's not able to unmute herself.
Well, I mean, you know what? Life is all about memories, and however much you put down in print and in books, even though Chopin, of course, was the book historian, it's all these memories that come flooding back to me, to all of us. And, where do I begin? Because I was 1 year junior to Chopin, like Shuranjan has already told you. Shuranjan the previous year, Chopin then, and I joined presidency in 73, and then came Omlan and Pradosh the following year. Many of us, there were so few boys, quote unquote boys, in the English department at that time.
we used to kind of totally disregard the batch system. And so we used to, because sheer outnumbered by all the girls, we probably felt a little kind of intimidated. So the boys used to hang out together. And Chopin and I therefore go back to that time. And there are stories, obviously, that I cannot tell you in this august company. But all I can say is that here was someone who brings together, and I still see him in the present, brings together the humanist and the humorist in such equal proportion. I don't think we will find anyone like that. His sense of humor was remarkable. A lot of the former speakers, my earlier speakers, have already mentioned that. But if any of our group were to go back on our kind of stash of emails and other messages, you'd be surprised at what we used to kind of share amongst ourselves. Chopin, Chopin lives on. I do believe that all the humanist values, the human values, live on in all of us who go by them, who abide by them. The reason I'm making this distinction is, as Shukantala actually already had said, very often scholarship doesn't go necessarily the human way. Very often the humanist scholars don't necessarily follow human paths of life. I go back to presidency, where Shukantala has already mentioned our revered Professor Arun Kumar Dasgupta, and how we as students used to literally worship him. I use the word advisedly, but we really used to literally worship the ground he tread. And Chopin and Bhashruti did something that I shall never forget. They would always take care of Arun Babu afterwards. They would regularly visit Arun Babu afterwards. Both of them had their work on hand. Both of them had so many other commitments to do. But that kind of human value is something that I think, these are things that should be passed down, passed on. We lost touch over the years when I was in the US, and then he was also doing his MA, and after that his postgraduate work. When we met each other again in the 90s in JU, I was amazed by the fact that in the mid-90s, some of you probably know this, but many of you will probably not know that Chopin used to disappear during the middle of the day. You couldn't find him. He would teach his morning classes, early morning classes, early morning by JU standards, of course. And then you couldn't find him anywhere. And so one day I pinned him down and said, Chopin, I used to call him Chopin, never Chopinda, because we used to be so close. Like Shuranjan said, Chopin and Shuranjan, even though they were separated by 1 year. And he told me, actually, I already had some inside news because my wife, Shati, taught in Calcutta International School, but Chopin readily confessed that he would disappear to CIS to pick up his son, who was then probably 9 years old or 10 years old in the mid-1990s. And it was his duty. I'll never forget that. He had to go all the way out there, pick Shoujo up, and then he would come back to JU. On those days, especially, that of course he had other duties, tutorials or classes. This is the kind of person that, the human values, obviously, we are talking about family here, but these values live on. And the next point, that readily comes up, because there's so many occasions on which he has helped. He would go out of his way to help you on anything. And this kind of altruism this kind of large-heartedness is now so rare, because we are all so busy in our own work, in our own lives, Chopin would actually drop what he was doing and go out of his way to help you. That altruism is something I think those of us who can kind of carry it on, these would be the tributes that we can possibly give to Chopin, who has taught me at least several of these. Another thing that as a junior in the department, as a junior faculty member, at a time when there were these, we never had any syllabus wars as such, but there were clearly certain boundaries, certain borders of English studies that we were debating, we were talking about regularly and often fighting for them. And Chopin, who, in terms of academic work would be, what we would call mainstream English studies. And I would be on the opposite side. And yet, we allowed these disagreements to happen. There would be no discord between us. And on top of that, what Chopin was very careful to do was the appreciation. Suddenly, one sentence of appreciation for a slightly unconventional academic work that I might have been doing. I was always into translation from very early on, not considered to be, proper mainstream English studies, perhaps at that time. I'm talking about the early 1990s, or theater, for instance. And that one sentence from Chopin, sort of told me that, I'm okay. I'm not I'm not way out of line over here. I shouldn't feel myself out in a cornered in one part of the room. That is so important for a young person to get that word of praise, that, don't neglect what you're doing. It's a good thing. Go ahead and do it. And then not finally, but later on, when he became head of the department, I had seen this in Chopin from his student politics days, because, believe it or not, I was also very briefly flirting with student politics in presidency. But the fearlessness, Chopin's fearlessness in facing any obstacle, and that carried on even when he was head of the department, even, things that you cannot imagine, even threats, he faced them. He said that this is going to happen to all of us. And God knows that some of us have actually faced this later on. Chopin said, this is part of life. This is going to happen. Handle it. Shamantok has talked about, Shuranjan has talked about administration. A lot of comments have already been made about administration, but something that I must point out is that Chopin was so much the stickler. He used to literally follow the book. He knew all the statutes, he knew all the rules and regulations, and he would point these out to us that, you're not doing this. You just go back to the rules and regulations. You'll find you have to follow those. You cannot ignore them. And unfortunately, there are people who are actually ignoring procedure now, working unilaterally, working undemocratically. This is not something that is done. And so, in all these various, quote unquote, the cliche Renaissance man areas, the humanist, the humorist, the person who helps out everybody, the person who also knows the book, everything about it, Chopin is still a guru whose example we must continue to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anandada. Shotidi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Shotidi, we can hear you.
Well, all that I can say is that there is something absolutely wrong in this situation, where I am here and Chopin is not. Chopin was one of my students. He has been like a son to both myself and my husband, Professor Bhavadar Chatterjee. And all these years he has been such a strong support in every sphere of life. Now to have missed him is terrible. All that I can say is, if there is anything like Shanti Rakha Intikam, I would pray for that for Swapan. Thank you.
Thank you, Shotidi. Madhav Babu is with us. Madhav Babu, if you could say a few words. Sir, একটু unmute করতে হবে। স্যার আপনার বাঁ হাতে একেবারে কোণার দিকে নিচে মাইক্রোফোনের ওখানে জাস্ট আনমিউট করে দিই।
Can we have Madhu
Okay,
Babu?
yeah. We could ask Professor Jatin Nayak. Yes.
কিছু বলবো না।
হ্যাঁ মাধব বাবু বলুন।
না আমি বিশেষ কিছু বলবো না, আমি শুনছি, আমি শুনবো, বলবো না।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে। Could we have Professor Jatin Nayak to say a few? Yeah, thank you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you, Sonia. So, like everyone here said, this is an occasion that fills us with unbearable sadness. That Swapan was an incredibly brilliant scholar, intellectual, that is common knowledge. So I don't want to add anything to that. I met Swapan at Oxford. I was a friend of Hasuti, then Swapan came. And in my last 3 months at Oxford, we got to know each other. Initially, I found him quite irritable, short-tempered. Perhaps he was full of worries about the Calcutta he had left behind. And then we became inseparable. When I came back to India, Swapan went on doing his PhD at Oxford. And then for the last 28 years or so, we have been very close friends. He's one of my dearest friends. And he was everything that I wasn't. He was brilliant, he was caring, he was a wonderful human being. But one thing we shared very intimately was our ability to laugh at ourselves and laugh at everyone else. So every time we would meet, I would laugh at him, he would laugh at me, and we would laugh at the whole world. And that was how we connected with each other. And every time I came to Kolkata, I will stay nowhere else. I'll always make a point of staying with Swapan and Hasuti because I had become a part of their world. And in 1999, when a cyclone devastated Odisha, someone approached him for some donation. He said, I have been looking after an Odia for the last 10 years. I've been feeding him, giving him money, looking after him. So I have done my bit for Odisha. I'm not going to give any money to anybody in Odisha. So that was Swapan. And every time I would go to Kolkata, I would spend time with him. He'll talk endlessly. And we'll talk late into the night. And around 2014 or so, I realized that Swapan's health is very fragile. And if I visit him too often, stay at his place, he'll go on talking. He'll go on talking endlessly and damage his health. That would damage his health. So I decided not to stay at Swapan's place. I would go to a guest house or hotel and then visit Swapan and Bhaswati and come back. So in 2016, a student of mine met him at Delhi and he introduced himself as my student. And then Swapan told him that Jatin has become very civilized these days. He doesn't come to our house anymore. He goes and stays in guest houses and hotels. So that was this Swapan I remember. A wonderful human being, extremely caring. I'm amazed when I hear so many people talking about his kindness and generosity of spirit. I wonder, where did he find this energy from to be so kind to me, so generous to me? So the void he has left is an aching void, unbearably painful, but we must learn how to live with it. We must do whatever we can. I told Samantak that we should do something, whatever we can to carry forward his rich legacy. We'll do everything we can. And such a wonderful human being will never be forgotten. Will always be with us. And may God give us the strength to bear this terrible sense of loss. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about my dearest friend.
Thank you, Professor Nayak. Neeladi, could you please say a few words?
I really didn't think, so let me just put on the thing. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I didn't really think I want to say anything. But of course, listening to everybody speak, and the fact, I'm sure many of you know that Shapunda and I shared a room together for many years in the department. And in fact, I think there was a time when, I'm not sure, I think Shubhantota was head, and he thought that Shapunda, being a senior professor, should have a single room. And so he suggested that. And I remember Shapunda vehemently resisted that, and he said, no, we are roommates and we're going to be roommates. And then he told me, sitting with you, we get a lot of gossip because, a lot of people come to your room and they tell you all kinds of things. And Shapunda used to love to gossip. I mean, we've all been talking about his scholarship and all of that. I was never Shapunda's student. Shapunda used to love to gossip about what was happening and, who was saying what, who is this person who came and said this to you, and all kinds of things. So he said that I've never, I don't want to leave your room. I won't know half of what's happening in the department of the university. And there was a time when we were very close, Gautam and I, with Shapunda and Bhaswati. We used to spend a lot of time together, and listening to Debashish, I was also reminded of the several evenings when we would just sit around, maybe on my rooftop, and we would just sing. Shapunda actually sang very well. He loved music. He loved, listening to music, talking about music. I mean, there were just so many different sides, which, I'm just sort of adding to what other people have said. Because it was really, really a very multifarious personality that we've all been talking about. And of course, he was always great fun. He didn't take fools easily. He used to hate, being confronted with anything that he thought was stupid. And his own intelligence being so high, a lot of people around him fitted that category. And he would, we've all been talking about his wit. He would make all kinds of comments and observations about things that have happened around him. But I remember one of the things that I really was extremely touched by. This was when my first book, and Indira Chaudhary, who was then our colleague, her first book, they were published more or less at the same time, and it was the first book for either of us. And Shapunda actually asked for a copy of these books, and he read them. He was a very fast reader, and of course he remembered everything. And so he gave it back to me about a week later. And he said, I really liked your book, and I think these things were really interesting. I think these are things that you can take up for further work. And I'd also like to point out that these were the copy editing mistakes that remained in the book. So next time, make sure that you copy edit it properly. But the fact that a senior colleague had taken this book, he read it, it was on television, which, as Ananda was saying, is not, it wasn't really accepted by academics at that time. But Chopin took it. He also did the same thing with Indira's book. And that kind of, that's a different kind of nurturing that, as a young, new teacher to the department, I really appreciated that kind of, encouragement and support from somebody like Chapundas, whose own interest was so different from my interest in what we did. So I think, it's really been wonderful having Chapunda as a roommate, as a colleague. I was never his student, and so I never saw him as a teacher as such, but I've seen him at work. When Sonia was doing her PhD, there were days when she would come and sit at Chapunda's desk, of course, with her drafts and so on. I've seen him in that sense. And yes, I can only add to what people are saying about the loss, the sadness, the way in which, he was more unique than a lot of other people are unique. Most of us sort of fit into certain molds, but Chapunda definitely is a person who intellectually, as a person, with all of his interests, is difficult to fit into a particular kind of mode. And I think he'll always leave a huge impression on the department. Thank you, Sonia, for asking me to speak and sharing some of the other kinds of things that we had shared for many years together.
Thank you, Nilade. I think we have Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta. Sanjukta Di, would you want to say a few words? Sanjukta Di?
Sonia, I think she's
Yeah,
having some problem.
maybe so.
herself.
Yeah. Krishna Di, are you here? You can. Krishna Di, could I request you to say a few words? Maybe they are having problems with their net connection. No, I can see them on my.
No, the mic is.
Yeah.
The icon is not shown.
Yeah, I guess sort of. Yeah.
So maybe invite Professor Shubhata Hazra to say a few words. Shubhata, would you?
Shubhata will join shortly. He's into some work.
I know that Sajniti and Omlanda are too overwhelmed with emotion to speak right now, so we won't be requesting them to say a few things about Shapunda, but could we request? I can see Debanjan. Debanjan, yes, Shugotada has joined.
Yeah, I can come after Shugotada.
Yeah,
After
yeah,
Shugotada.
sure,
Yeah,
Debanjan.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Sonia.
শপথের বিষয়ে আমি যে একটু বলতে প্রস্তুত তা নই। স্বপনদা কে অনেক সময়তেই আমরা যারা ইংরেজি বিভাগের বা কলা বিভাগের নই তারা মিট করতাম মিলনের দোকানে, চায়ের দোকানে, মিলনের আড্ডায়, এবং অন্য কেউ থাকলেও স্বপনদাকে দেখলেই আমাদের মুখটা উদ্ভাসিত হয়ে উঠত, কারণ প্রচন্ড বুদ্ধিমান, কস্টিক, অনেক সময় প্রচন্ড সেন্স অফ হিউমার, এরকম লোককে সাধারণত আমরা আমাদের জীবনে মিট করি না যেরকম ভাবে স্বপনদা ছিলেন। আমার এই আনন্দময় অভিজ্ঞতাটাই আমার কাছে সবসময় থাকবে, কারণ আমাদের ইউনিভার্সিটির মধ্যে এবং ইউনিভার্সিটির বাইরে যে সমস্ত ইন্টারাকশন হয়েছে, কখনো সমাজ, কখনো সাহিত্য এবং কখনো আমাদের বিজ্ঞানের যে বিষয় বা বিভিন্ন রকম সংকট নিয়ে আমরা কাজ করি, সেগুলোর বিষয়ে স্বপনদার সুচিন্তিত অভিমত অনেকটাই একটু একটা কস্টিক টাচ নিয়ে আসতো, যেটা আমাদের ক্রিটিক্যালি থিঙ্ক করতে বাধ্য করতো। কিন্তু এত আনন্দময় অভিজ্ঞতাটা সঙ্গে আমি কোনোভাবেই, স্বপনদা একদমই আমাদের মধ্যে নেই, এই জায়গাটাকে এখনো আমি মানিয়ে নিতে পারিনি। স্বপনদা আমার বাড়ির কাছেই থাকতেন, আর ওই মানে ইউনিভার্সিটি ছেড়ে উনি অনেক জায়গাতেই কাজ করছিলেন, তখনও ওনার সঙ্গে আমার দেখা হতো না। আমি মনে করি এখনো আমার সঙ্গে ওনার দেখা হচ্ছে না এই পর্যন্ত। কিন্তু কখনোই হঠাৎ করে স্বপনদাকে হয় মিলনে, নয় নিরঞ্জনাদের ছাদের আড্ডায়, কিংবা মেমরি লেনের মধ্যে আর বলেন।
থ্যাংক ইউ সুগতদা। দেবাঞ্জন।
থ্যাংক ইউ সোনিয়া। সবাই তো স্কলার স্বপনদা, শিক্ষক স্বপনদা নিয়ে অনেক কিছু বললেন। আমি একটু অন্য দিক থেকে একটু যদি বলি, মানে শিক্ষক হিসেবে পেয়েছি, পরে কাজের সূত্রে, ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিলে কাজের সূত্রে আমি ওই অন্য দিকগুলো, যে যখন ন্যাশনাল লাইব্রেরিতে ছিলেন, ভিক্টোরিয়া মেমোরিয়াল, ন্যাশনাল মিউজিয়াম, এগুলো দায়িত্বে ছিলেন, খুব ক্লোজলি কাজ করেছি। Swapan is the teacher who first offered me a cigarette. Swapan is also the teacher who I got drunk with first, the first teacher in whose company I got drunk. And he's the teacher who was instrumental in me getting my first job, introducing me to Bhashwati, who I didn't know back then, immediately after my MA. And the reason I deliberately am putting out these rather intimate facets is because Shopanda was someone who, Jadavpur University English Department, Department of English, Jude as we fondly call it, can be very formidable for many of us who came to it from non-urban, less metropolitan backgrounds such as myself. And Shopanda understood this very well. And I think it was a way of him kind of making Jadavpur a bit normal for us, making, welcoming us into Jadavpur's, extremely exciting intellectual milieu. Shupriyadi mentioned that, Shopanda had quite an disastrous undergraduate results, like a little bit like him. I mean, I cannot ever compare myself to him. I had a slightly underwhelming undergraduate results, and I was really, quite determined to do something else, not pursue masters. And he was hugely instrumental in kind of, talking to me, almost, hand-holding and mentoring me and inspiring me to carry on. And I think I'll forever be grateful to him for that. And I think Shukantoda mentioned how he was advised to keep an eye out for Shopanda, and this is something that he kind of passed on to subsequent generations of students, and not just in the English department. I was looking at social media tributes. I noticed one very touching tribute from Bishwajit Rai, who teaches Bangla in Vishwabharati, a few years junior to me in school, and at Jadavpur studied Bangla. Bishu had, given a wonderful account of how Shopanda reached out to him. I read Shumon Mukhopadhyay Lalda's tribute to him, and again, capturing that essence of Jadavpur in a way that Shopanda embodied, I think, Jadavpur spirit. There was this tremendous playfulness in his intellect that I will, I've always been attracted to. I don't think I was particularly of an academic mind as a student, but I think that really, his tremendous interest in the way the world of the word and the world, that playfulness is the thing. And I think he was iconoclastic in the nicest way possible. Nothing was beyond the scope of his humor, and that, when I look at my WhatsApp messages, it's just full of ridiculous, ridiculously sublime play on bilingual puns, and Niladi said gossip. It's full of PNPC, and it's just full of life in that sense. I also had the great fortune of working with Shopanda during his time as Victoria Memorial Director in National Library as well as National Museum. I think there's one incident I'd like to just end my memory of him with. So Shopanda and I were traveling to London for attending a particular festival. And we were about to have dinner with a close friend of ours, his family friend, Mrinmoy Rai, who lived in London, a little bit of a trek away. And we had brought some wine for Mrinmoy just outside Charing Cross Station. And we were having some beers, a couple of beer waiting for the train. And Shopanda said, Debanjan পেছন দিকে ঘুরে তাকিও না এক্ষুনি, আমাদের দিকে কিন্তু দুজন আর্ম পুলিশ খুব ভীষণ ফোকাস ভাবে তাকিয়ে আছে. Don't alarm them in any way, we might be shot. Of course, man, it was all in humor. There really were two armed police looking at us. And he said, why do you think Shopanda এটা আমাদের দিকে তাকিয়ে আছে? বলে, can't you make out two bearded brown men drinking beer with backpack on them, about to board a train? What can be more dangerous in London than this? So he had to make fun of every situation he was in, and I think this really is something that I will forever miss. I mean, having Shopanda, who was like an elder brother I never had to me. And one of the things that I was talking to Shujata Di, my predecessor, that Shopanda produced this wonderful document on City of Literature a few years back. And it is something that I think we have as far as I know, the only extant hard copy of that report. So we would like to make a publication out of it. There is politics around City of Literature UNESCO tag, which we have not managed to overcome, but I think we can certainly celebrate Shopanda with that book of wonderful scholarship. Thank you.
Thank you, Debanjanda. May I invite Jayati Di to say a few words? Professor Jayati Gupta. Okay, I think Jayati Di is having some problem unmuting herself. Oh, yes, right. Okay, fine.
Yes, Sonia. I was there at the BOS yesterday, and I just said that I have never been taught by Chopin. I have never been a colleague of Chopin's. But I've known Chopin and Bhashwati for a very long time. And at Jadavpur, when I was doing my MA, Chopin and Bhashwati were my juniors at that point of time there. And we've been friends, not that we have met very often, but whenever we have met, one has been, I think, overwhelmed by the way in which we have been able to pick up from wherever we had left off. That goes for both Chopin and Bhashwati. And when Pantu was young, and my elder son was also, they are of the same age. We've had great times together when we visited each other. And Chopin was also instrumental, I think, in facilitating my younger son's entry into Jadavpur, because he had done his A-levels and O-levels, and he was asked to come with all his papers. And it was Omlan and Chopin. Chopin was the head at that point of time, and Omlan and Chopin who said that he had the adequate results to, enter into Jadavpur. And very obviously, as his student, my younger son has very, very glowing memories of Chopin. And I would also, message him, mail him, WhatsApp him. Whenever I got stuck with any book or any reference which I was not able to get. Unfortunately, during the time I was in the National Library 2015 to 17, Chopin had already left. But still I knew that, he knows National Library, everything about it and all its books. And so Chopin has, always been a source of great, not just knowledge, but friendship and, this willingness to help. So it's a big loss, actually, a personal loss in that sense of the term. So that's all that I would like to say at this point.
Right. Thank you, Jayatidi. Can I invite Professor Bashabi Fraser to say a few words about Chopin? Okay. Now, Professor Bashabi Fraser, could we invite you to say a few words about Chopin? Okay. I think she's having some problem unmuting. Could we then ask Kavita, would like to say a few words? Would you like to go next? Professor Kavita Panjabi from the Department of Comparative.
Rafat, could we if Kavita Di will
Exactly.
pitch in a,
Yes.
yeah, could we just ask
I just
Shatuki?
heard you. I just heard you. I don't want to speak. I just want to hear today. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kavita Di. Could we have Professor Shatuki Pal to say a few words about Shopunda? Professor Shatuki Pal? He too must be having problems with his connection. Could we ask colleagues from our department, Parumita Di, Nandini Di, to say a few words?
I'm in Array, Sonia.
Okay, okay, I can understand.
Can I say a few words?
Yeah, yes, Nandini.
I wasn't a student of Shopunda, of course. And when I did have a very short stint at Jadavpur as an MPhil student between 93 and 95. But I do not, yes, I think Shopunda took 1 or 2 classes for us. I think so. But I really came into, interacted with him properly when I came to teach at Jadavpur. I've been here since 2009. And someone just mentioned that he had this wonderful quality about him to make you comfortable. And as a very young person joining Jadavpur, of course, I started teaching young. So I had been teaching for almost 13 years at Kollani before I came to Jadavpur. But Jadavpur was new to me, and so were all the faculty members, everybody. And Shopunda actually, his presence is very intimidating. The way he speaks, his humor, his wit, his level of intellect, anybody can gauge it, and it tends to, and especially for people who don't know him, you tend to stay away. But he had that quality to pull you into that, circle of, what can I call it? Almost that magnetic circle of his where you get to, and at times he would take me to his room, talk about, what are you planning about your research? Are you planning to do some kind of research work? I think there was some project happening somewhere. And I said, I'm interested in it, and he would encourage. So very short period I had with him at Jadavpur, but he's one of those people who can leave a very deep impression, even in the minds of people, minds and hearts of people that he has interacted with for a very short time. And I think I'm just not as lucky as others of having known him for very long or having been his student or scholar. But the little that I've known him, yes. And it is as shocking as everybody else says. Even for me, it is very shocking to be here today and speaking like this. But I just hope he continues to be his own great self wherever he is. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandini. There are viewers who are watching the program in the YouTube live streaming who have been conveying their messages, which Aldish has been relaying it. So I hope they are visible to everyone. May I invite Professor Shantanu Dash to say a few words next. Professor Shantanu, yes.
That's very kind of you. All I can say is that I'm completely heartbroken and I'm really at a loss for words. I was taught by Shopunda for a few months in Jadavpur before I went to Cambridge. I remember he taught us 12th night. And it was just kind of amazing, meaning we had been taught 12th night before in presidency, but he gave us completely new perspectives. And later, he was wonderfully kind when I was working in the National Library, and that's when I got to know him. But at this moment, I think I feel too raw to say much, but thank you. And it was just kind of lovely to be with you all and share and kind of listen to all these memories. Thanks.
Thank you, Shantanu. Sujit, Professor Sujit Mandal from the Department of Comparative Literature would like to say a few words. So may I invite him?
Rafat, শোনা যাচ্ছে?
Yes, please go ahead.
সত্যি বলতে কি আমি স্বপনদার উপর খুব রেগেই আছি বলবো। মাত্র কয়েকদিন আগেই কথা হয়েছে, স্বপনদা বলেওনি যে তখনও নার্সিং হোমের বেডে। অ্যাকচুয়ালি স্বপনদা আমাকে আশ্বস্ত করেছিল যে তুই ভাবিস না, তোকে আমাদের একটা মিটিং এর ব্যাপার ছিল। অ্যাকচুয়ালি যাদবপুর ছাড়ার পর থেকে স্বপনদার সঙ্গে তুলনামূলক সাহিত্য বিভাগের যোগাযোগ কোনো সময়ই যায়নি, নিরবিচ্ছিন্নভাবে যোগাযোগ থেকে গেছে নানান কমিটি ইত্যাদি ইত্যাদি সূত্রে। তো সেরকমই একটা মিটিং এর জন্য স্বপনদার সঙ্গে কথা হচ্ছিল, তো বললো যে এখন একটু হচ্ছে না, শরীরটা ভালো নেই, তুই নিশ্চিন্ত থাক, পুজোর আগে তোকে ডেফিনেটলি আমি একটা ডেট দেব। তো কেউ কথা রাখে না, স্বপনদাও রাখেনি। এই রাখেনি বলাতে আবার মনে হচ্ছে আমার একটা কথা যে স্বপনদার ছাত্র সমন্তকদা আমার বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের 5 বছরের মাস্টারমশাই। সমন্তকদাকে আমি আপনি বলি, কিন্তু আমি পরে ভেবে পাইনি যে ঠিক কোন স্পর্ধায় স্বপনদাকে আমি প্রথম থেকেই তুমি বলি। এটা অদ্ভুত লাগে। স্বপনদা, অম্লানদা এদেরকে ঠিক কি কারণে আমি তুমি বলতে শুরু করেছিলাম। ছাত্র হিসেবে যাদবপুরে ঢোকার সুযোগ পাইনি, শিক্ষক হিসেবে যখন ঢুকেছি তখন সত্যি বলতে কি ইউজি আর্টস এর দোতলার করিডোরটার সিঁড়ির ডান দিকে কম্পারেটিভ, বাঁ দিকে ইংলিশ, এই করিডোর দিয়ে হাঁটতে গেলেই হাঁটু কাঁপতো, এরকম একটা জায়গা। চারিদিকে সব দিকপাল মাস্টারমশাইরা, ছাত্রবেলায় যাদের সব নাম শুনে এসছি সেরকম সব দিকপালরা। তো সেখানে এসে স্বপনদা এমন কিছু একটা জায়গা হয়তো দিয়েছিলেন যে কারণে তুমি বলাটা শুরু হয়েছিল। একটা কথা বোধহয় বলাটা উচিত আমার, স্বপনদার পাণ্ডিত্য নিয়ে কিছু বলবার স্পর্ধা আমার নেই, কিন্তু স্বপনদার একটা অন্য দিক, সেটা আমি বললে বোধহয় আরো অনেক বেশি অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েট হয়, যে কারণে এটা বলে নেওয়াটা দরকার আমি মনে করছি, যেটার খানিকটা দেবাঞ্জনদা বলেছেন, আনন্দদাও সেই দিকটা বলবার চেষ্টা করছিলেন। সেটা হচ্ছে আমার সবসময় মনে হয়েছে যে স্বপনদা একজন পক্ষপাত দুষ্ট মানুষ, পক্ষপাত দুষ্ট শিক্ষক। ঘাবড়ে যাবেন না, আমি খুব সচেতন ভাবেই শব্দটা ব্যবহার করেছি। আমি বা আমার মতো হয়তো আরো অনেকেই ছাত্র হিসেবে বা শিক্ষক হিসেবে যাদবপুরের ওই দোতলায় যাদের প্রথমবার কেন, তারপরেও অনেকদিন পর্যন্ত হাঁটু কেঁপেছে শুধু হাঁটার জন্য, কথা বলা ইত্যাদি তো অনেক পরের কথা, ক্লাস নেওয়া ইত্যাদি তো অনেক পরের কথা, ওইরকম একটা জায়গায় দাঁড়িয়ে আছি, তাতেই হাঁটু কাঁপতে থাকে, এরকম একটা এরকম একটা স্পেস, সেরকম একটা জায়গায় এরকম কিছু মানুষ আমরা পেয়েছি যারা হঠাৎ করে একটা প্রায় কাঁধে একটা বিশাল হাত ফেলে হাতে চাপড় মেরে কিরে কি করছিস, কেমন আছিস বলে আলাপ শুরু করেন, তখন সত্যি বলতে কি আমি বা আমার মতো লোকেদের না অনেকটা আত্মবিশ্বাস বেড়ে যায়, অনেকটা গ্রহণযোগ্যতা তৈরি হয়। এবং স্বপনদাকে আমার মনে হয়েছে আমার মতো এরকম কত ছাত্রের, কত মানুষের গ্রহণযোগ্যতা তৈরি করে দিয়েছেন, পায়ের তলার মাটি তৈরি করে দিয়েছেন, আত্মবিশ্বাসের জায়গা তৈরি করে দিয়েছেন। আমি নিজেকে দিয়ে জানি এবং অনেক বছর ধরে ওনাকে দূর থেকে হলেও দেখে যা মনে হয়েছে, তাতে করে বোধহয় অনেকের জন্যই উনি এরকম একটা জায়গা দিতে পেরেছেন। আমার মতো মানুষদের প্রতি ওনার একটা পক্ষপাতিত্ব ছিল বলেই আমার মনে হয়েছে। যাদবপুর বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়, জুড, সিএল কমপ্লিট, জেইউ, এরকম কতগুলো পরিভাষার সঙ্গে যে দক্ষিণ কলকাতার কতকগুলো নামি স্কুল এবং সেই স্কুল থেকে 4 নম্বর গেটে গাড়ি নিয়ে ঢোকা ছাত্রছাত্রী বা মাস্টারমশাই, তার বাইরে যে আরেকটা দ্বিতীয় যাদবপুর আছে, এই দ্বিতীয় যাদবপুর, যে যাদবপুর বাসে ঝুলতে ঝুলতে আসে কিংবা যে যাদবপুর ট্রেন থেকে অনেক লড়াই করে নামে অথবা বিকেলবেলা ওঠে, সেই যাদবপুর, সেই দ্বিতীয় যাদবপুরের প্রতি একটা পক্ষপাতিত্ব স্বপনদার ছিল বলে আমার সবসময় আমি ফিল করেছি, আমার মনে হয়েছে। এবং এটাই বোধহয় আনন্দদাও বলছিলেন যে স্বপনদার জন্য সত্যি বলতে কি আমরা কেউই বোধহয় এটা এখনো মেনে নিতে তৈরি নই যে স্বপনদা আমাদের মধ্যে নেই। তাও যদি স্বপনদার লিগ্যাসি আমাদের কিছু ধরে রাখতে হয়, যদি আমাদের সত্যি কিছু ট্রিবিউট তৈরি করতে হয়, আমি আমার ব্যক্তিগত জায়গা থেকে বলবো, এই যে পক্ষপাত দুষ্ট মানুষটার কথা আমরা বললাম, ওর এই পক্ষপাতিত্বের দিকটা যদি আমরা এগিয়ে নিয়ে যেতে পারি, তাহলে হয়তো স্বপনদার প্রতি আমি আমার শ্রদ্ধা জানাতে পারবো এবং আমরা হয়তো মানুষটার একটা খুব জরুরি, খুব প্রয়োজনীয়, খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ দিক বুঝতে পারবো। ধন্যবাদ রাফাত।
Thank you, Sujit. There are many more whom we would like to invite to speak, but considering positive time, we would like to open the floor to all participants. If they wish to say anything, please feel free to unmute your mic and go ahead. We'd like to open the floor to all participants who are with us today. If anyone wishes to say something, please feel free to unmute the mic. Tapatiti, would you like to say something? If you've unmuted your mic. Tapati Gupta.
হ্যাঁ সাত্যকী বাবু, হ্যাঁ বলুন আপনি, প্লিজ। মিউট আছে, শোনা যাচ্ছে না। স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে না, আপনি একটু আনমিউট করে যদি বলেন ভালো হয়। Rafat, I think there's a problem with his mic.
Sonyadi, it seems to be an connectivity issue.
I guess so. It's really sad that we can't hear what he has to say.
So in that case,
no, yeah, we can't hear him. Could we ask?
Unmuted, and both mic and camera are on actually.
আবেন নিয়ে আসবে, আমার আবেন কি ও নিয়ে যাবে?
সাতকে বাবু, আপনি আপনার অডিওটাকে একবার রিকানেক্ট করুন তো।
টাকাটা
It's not working, I think. In the meantime, could we have Taupati Gupta from CU as well as Taupati Guho Thakurata from the center to say a few words? Taupati di? Yes, Taupati, can you hear us? I think Rafat, yes, I think Taupati has unmuted herself.
Yes, she has unmuted, but we can't hear her.
We can't hear her, that's the problem.
Else, would like to say anything, please feel free to. Should we invite someone from the SCTR, some of Shravan students who Spandana or someone who would like to say something? Spandana, are you here? Would you like to say something?
I think Spandana is having a problem with her mic as well.
Go ahead with the closing song and then end with the closing remarks. So, should I invite Anandagi?
Yes, you could, Rafat, please.
So, may I invite Professor Ananda Dr. Gupta from Department of English Vishavarti to give a performance. This will be the closing song, and then.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, Dr. wants to say something. Yes, yes, we can hear you, ma'am. Please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Please, please go ahead.
তপতি দি, আপনাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে?
শোনা যাচ্ছে? Okay. I'm in not a very good place. I'm in a hospital. So I've come out to the terrace from the room. So that is a different story. I don't want to share it in this. Swapan wore his erudition so naturally. That's what struck me. So he was a unique personality, as everyone knows. And I met him so often in different places. For instance, in the airport on his way to Delhi. And ever since, well, my husband is also Swapan, and Bhashyoti was very close to me. It's very painful for me to talk about Swapan, really. Bhashyoti, I've known her as a colleague, and she's also related to me in some way. And I've seen Pantu from a very young age. So I just could not imagine that this could happen to him. I went to Jadavpur so often, as you know, he appointed me as an examiner, as Sonia knows. And what struck me was that not only his own subject, but he knew minute details about what we consider mundane things, like the accounts and the properties of Calcutta University, for instance, saying that it is the richest university, that it owns so many buildings in the College Street area. I was really amazed how a little brain, a human brain, could hold so much. And at the same time, well, I've shared platforms with him in conferences. He would point out flaws, minor flaws, so humorously that no one would mind, you see? But he knew how to give proper respect where it was due. There's nothing else really. I mean, if I go on, I think I can write volumes on him. But this is not the proper place, and I'm not in a very good place. I'm in a hospital. So I think I'll stop here. And I still can't imagine Chopin with his little twinkle in his eyes, and how he was not very well, I know. When I've shared a table with him eating, I could see that the condition of his nerves, but never was he daunted by that. I've seen him in the National Library and he was so helpful. So, and another thing that struck me was, well, he was always full of respect for my husband and would ask me about him, how he is. And I would say, well, he's fine. He's still singing. He's doing his career. And Chopin would say, Topo Didi, career is not everything about a human being. I'm asking you how he is. So there was a meaning in that, I think. He meant the total being, the total personality. Career is something external. You see, Chopin was a very deep thinker, not only about, well, Middleton or things intellectual, but about life in general. I miss him very badly. And my condolences with Bhashwati and Pantu and all his friends. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Tapatidi. I hope you get well soon. May I invite Professor Tapati Chakravorty from the Center of Studies in Social Sciences to say a few words?
Rafat, I think Tapatidi has left because she sent a text message.
Okay, right.
In the
so in that case,
chat.
Anyone else from the SCTR who is here?
We could ask Spandana once more.
Yeah,
yeah.
I called her, but I think she's having some problems.
Yes, Spandana is here.
Spandana is here. Okay.
Thank you, Sonia Di. Am I audible?
Yes, Spandana.
I really wasn't prepared to say anything, but as some of you know, I wasn't a student of Jadavpur University during my graduation. I had a graduation in chemistry and then suddenly shifted to film studies in my master's. And I was a very good girl during my master's. I wouldn't go to canteens much. I had a few friends who were only the people who were in my class. So I really didn't know much about the professors around, especially people in the other side of the building in the UG Arts. I remember once when the master's was over and I applied for a project fellow, position at SCTR, I faced 5 people on the other side of the table in the interview, and I knew nothing about them. Later, I came to know there was Shukantada, there was Shapunda, Tintinda, and a couple others I don't remember. Anuradha Chandu, Anuradha Di. I remember Shukantada asking me about the shift from chemistry to film studies, and I don't remember my answer, but I remember him saying, Shapon, খানিকটা তোমার মতো. And I remember Shaponda একটা মুচকি হাসি দিলেন. Later, when we started working at SCTR, of course, it was a small room at the end of the film studies corridor. And we will have Shukantada there, Shapon Mujumdar আসতেন মাঝে মাঝে, অনুরাধা দি আসতেন. কিন্তু স্বপনদা যখনই আসতেন, আমরা সকলকেই ভীষণ ভয় পেতাম. স্বপনদা আসলে মনে হতো টেবিলের তলায় লুকুন, কারণ কখন যে আড়ে আড়ে তাকিয়ে কি একটা বলবেন হয়তো বুঝতেও পারবো না. কিন্তু এখানেই মনে আছে স্বপনদা বসেছেন এডিট করতে কোনো একটা রিপোর্ট, আস্তে আস্তে কাজ করছেন. স্বপনদার আস্তে আস্তে, মানে আমাদের কাছে সেটা অতিমানবিক স্পিড, কিন্তু কাজ করছেন আর বলছেন কি করছেন এমন নয় যে আমরা জানতে চেয়েছি, আমরা 2-4 জন পেছনে দাঁড়িয়ে আছি, কিন্তু ওই যে বলছেন আর ওর মধ্যে দিয়ে আমরা শিখছি. পরে বুঝতে পেরেছি যে কতটা শিখেছি ওইখানে কাজ করার সময়. স্বপনদা অদ্ভুতভাবে প্রথম মানুষ যিনি আমাকে ডেকে লিখতে বলেন. আমি কেমিস্ট্রি থেকে এসেছি, তারপর করেছি ফিল্ম স্টাডিজ, তারপর কাজ করেছি আরো একটা অন্যরকম বিষয় নিয়ে, ডিজিটাল হিউম্যানিটিস. আমাকে ডেকে লিখতে বলা মতো দুঃসাহস, যেখানে আমি আর তার আগে প্রায় কিছুই সেরকম লিখিনি, এবং স্বপনদাও হয়তো পড়ে দেখেননি কেমন আমি লিখি. এটা বোধহয় স্বপনদাই করতে পারতেন. এই ভরসাটা, এই কনফিডেন্সটা স্বপনদার পক্ষেই সম্ভব ছিল. আমার মনে আছে যে সেই লেখা পড়ে স্বপনদার ছোট ছোট 2-একটা পরামর্শ আর বেশ খানিকটা ভালো কথা বলা আমাকে কতটা সাহায্য করেছিল পরবর্তীকালে. এই যে অনেকেই বললেন যে কনফিডেন্স তৈরি করে দেওয়া. আমি যে কনফিডেন্স পাচ্ছি না, কারণ সত্যি আমার বারবার মনে হতো যে আমি যেখান থেকে এসেছি সেখান থেকে এসে এমন একটা কাজের দায়িত্ব নেওয়া নিজের গবেষণার ক্ষেত্রে, সত্যি আমি পারবো. এই বিশ্বাসটা জোগাড় করে দেওয়া একটা অদ্ভুত ব্যাপার. মানে ওই 2-4টে ছোট কথার মধ্যে দিয়ে কোথাও একটা আশ্চর্যভাবে পরে মনে হলো যে হ্যাঁ, তাহলে স্বপনদা যদি বলেন যে এটা ভালো হয়েছে বা এটা করতে পেরেছি, তাহলে নিশ্চয়ই পেরেছি, খানিকটা তো পেরেছি. আর আমার এটাও মনে পড়ছে যে যখন সেই লেখারই ফুটনোট গুলো স্বপনদা ঠিক করছেন, আমাকে ফোন করে বুঝিয়ে বলেছেন যে কোথায় কি বদল করছেন. সেটাও আশ্চর্য, মানে ওর মধ্যে দিয়েও আমাকে শেখাচ্ছেন. এই যে শেখানোটা. আরেকটা কথা বলবো, এটা মানে বেশ খানিকটা ব্যক্তিগত. আমি একসময় স্কুল অফ কালচারাল টেক্সট অ্যান্ড রেকর্ডস এর এডিটিং অ্যান্ড পাবলিশিং কোর্সে ঢুকেছিলাম, আমি শেষও করেছি. সেখানে ঢুকে বেশ কিছুদিন ক্লাস করার পর আমার নিজের মনে হয়েছিল যে আমি এখানে কি করছি. আমি এসেছি বাংলা মিডিয়াম থেকে, পড়েছি কেমিস্ট্রি, তারপর ফিল্ম স্টাডিজ. কোথাও যেন সেই সময় কোর্সটার একটা কোর্সের ফোকাস বলবো না, কিন্তু বেশিরভাগ ছাত্রছাত্রী ছিল ইংলিশ থেকে. তাদের বোঝা আর আমার বোঝা অন্যরকম ছিল. এমনও মনে হচ্ছিল যে কর্মক্ষেত্রে গেলে হয়তো আমার সুযোগ অনেকটা কম, কারণ বাংলাতে সেইভাবে এডিটিং এবং পাবলিশিং এর উপর ততটা গুরুত্ব সেই অর্থে সেই সময় তখন আমি বুঝতে পারিনি, তখন আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি। আমার মনে হচ্ছিল যে আমি হয়তো খানিকটা অসময়ে বেজায়গায় চলে এসেছি। এবং একদিন মনে আছে ক্যান্টিনে, মিলনদার ক্যান্টিনে সন্ধ্যাবেলা খুব দুঃখ করছি বসে বসে, যে কেন এলাম, কেন পড়ছি, এই তো আমার কি কিছু হবে। আমরা জানতাম না স্বপনদা দূরে কোথাও পেছন দিকে বসে চা খাচ্ছিলেন। বেরোনোর মুখে দাঁড়িয়ে আমার সঙ্গে যে ছিল তাকে খুব সুন্দর করে বুঝিয়ে বললেন যে এডিটিং পাবলিশিং এ যা যা শেখানো হয় তাতে শুধু ভাষা নির্ভর নয়, তাতে আর কি কি উপকার হয়, কিভাবে একটা মানুষ কাজ করতে শেখে। চলে যাওয়ার পর বুঝলাম আমাকেই বলে গেলেন। এই যে বলে বলে যাওয়া কিন্তু সরাসরি বলা নয়, আস্তে করে পাশ থেকে আড়াল থেকে বুঝিয়ে দেওয়া যে ঠিক আছে পড়ো না, কোনো অসুবিধা নেই, এগো, ভুল করতে পারো, আরো জানবে, জানার চেষ্টাটা চালিয়ে যাও, লেখো, লিখতে লিখতে শেখো, সুযোগ পেলে সুযোগ নাও, ভয় পেও না। এই এই জিনিসগুলো বোধহয় মানে আমি আমার সমস্ত মাস্টার মশাইয়ের কাছ থেকে পেয়েছি। আজ স্বপনদা নেই, স্বপনদার কথা বারবার মনে পড়ছে, ওর এই ছোট ছোট ঘটনাগুলো, কথাগুলো বারবার মনে আসছে। আমি আর কিছু বলতে চাই না। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you, Spandana. I think, may I reiterate my request, if there's anyone else in the meeting who would like to say anything, please.
Rafada, I believe.
Yes.
Shattoki sir has been able to unmute himself.
Okay. Yes. So let's invite him. Shattoki, would you like?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Hi. Yes, thank you, Dr. Shahu and Dr. Rafat Ali. Many of you may not be aware that I am from Ramakrishna Mission College, Narendrapur. Many of you here may not be aware that he started his teaching career at Ramakrishna Mission College, Narendrapur, way back in 1978, November, if my information is right. I was not there at that time. I was a student. Many of you might not be knowing that he was at that time a probationary officer at State Bank of India. And when he joined Narendrapur, you realize he sacrificed a huge salary at the State Bank. So even at that young age, when people dither about their career, especially when they're working as an officer in a bank, to give up a banking service and join as a teacher at Narendrapur, when I think the pay was hardly 700 rupees, which was a pittance compared to that salary at State Bank, shows the kind of focus that he had. He was a scholar, maybe from his school days. I first came in contact with Shopunda at the university, Calcutta University. In my final year, some of the texts were left untouched. One was Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. And Professor Jyoti Bhattacharya, who was head of the department at the time, had asked his Chopin to do that text with us. I will not speak about his scholarship. I think I am not capable enough to speak about. I will not be able to catch the amount of scholarship that he had. I will only say that what we enjoyed as very young, callow students was the way he brought in with his interpretation of text, which was so serious, his humor, his wit. It was a combination of seriousness and witty exchange with the students. I joined Narendrapur when he was already there for 5 years, I think. I joined Narendrapur in 1983, December. I want to point out one thing about myself, which actually speaks about Shopunda. I was appointed by the College Service Commission, and the college was bound to take me as a teacher. The college did not. They asked me to give a seminar lecture. I was very nervous, but I had to give that lecture. One person who was missing in my seminar lecture was Dr. Swapan Chakravorty. The others were there, the students were there, my colleagues, later colleagues were there, future colleagues. The monks were there. Shopunda was not there. But at that time, I was so nervous that I did not notice that he was not there. And that was my first day. I mean, even I had not begun my career. Later on, when we were traveling, we used to travel together after the class hours. Shopunda told me, you know why I was not there? I did not say anything. He said, this was a protest. The mission had no authority to ask you to give a seminar lecture because you have already been appointed by the College Service Commission. And during his stay at Nandapur, he was there till October, I think, 1985. Although he had a deep respect for the mission, he always stood up to protest against all kinds of what he felt were wrong decisions by the authority. What I learned from Shopunda, well, I could not measure his scholarship, so I'm not speaking about his scholarship. What I learned from Shopunda was the way he was such a committed teacher. You know, teaching in college, and especially at Ramakrishna Mission College in Anandapur, is a very demanding thing, especially for a man like Shopunda, who was also doing his research work along with his daily routine at Anandapur. At that time, we had what you may call not only the plus 12 course along with the honors course, we had, you know, a subject called the compulsory English, and which carried 100 marks. But no teacher took that subject, and therefore, examining those scripts very seriously. I was surprised to find Shopunda going through the scripts with such commitment, sincerity. That was something amazing. He was such a committed, sincere teacher, not only a scholar, but also a teacher. And to pay attention to these very ordinary scripts, which we used to check casually, was something amazing. In the last 15 or 20 years, Shopunda left Narendrapur, Jadavpur in 1985, sometime in October. And then he went over to Oxford for his DPhil. He came back. We did not lose contact, but in the last 15 or 20 years, we have been holding lots of seminars at Narendrapur. The UGC seminars, apart from the UGC seminars, annual inter-college university students seminar. Whenever we had requested, asked Shopunda, whenever now, always we had asked Shopunda to be there in some capacity, either as a chief guest or as a keynote addresser or as a speaker. Shopunda never said no. Such was his deep association with this department, English department at Narendrapur. That is one thing we will miss very badly. I'm getting somewhat personal. Just before the COVID, or during the COVID actually, in the early months, I rang him up and somewhere in our conversation, I said, I love to travel. And I told Shopunda, আমার ভীষণ টার্কি আর ইস্তাম্বুল যেতে ইচ্ছে করে। তাই দেখো আমার আজকাল বয়স হয়ে গেছে, আজকাল বেশি দূরে একা যেতে একটু ভয় পাই। তুমি যখন টার্কি ইস্তাম্বুল যাবে না, আমাকে বলো, আমরা দুজনে একসঙ্গে যাব। That will never happen. I will only end by saying that there are lots of undergraduate students who have established themselves very well, and some of them had done PhD under Shopunda. I now recall Shumit Chakravorty of Presidency, Shubhajit Sengupta Bardhaman. And so therefore Shopunda will live on in our memories. And the young scholars at Narendrapur, the young teachers at Narendrapur, we had the opportunity to interact with Shopunda because Shopunda kept coming to Narendrapur. Whenever we call him, I will make him live in us. Death will not be able to overcome him. One short sleep passed, and death you will be no more. Death, thou will be no more. Death, thou will die. Shopunda will live in our memory, and we at Narendrapur will at the same time miss him and also remember him. Whenever an occasion will come to remember Shopunda, especially the seminars where he was a scintillating presence. Thank you for giving me a hearing. May Shopunda's soul rest in peace. And may Bhashwati Di and Shoujo get the strength to bear this very unfortunate, a very a premature loss of such a great scholar and a great soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shattakipal. I think with that, we could come to the close of the program. And so I'd like to invite request Professor Ananda Dattagupta to perform her closing song. Ananda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And well, I'm no singer, and certainly not one that can do justice to the occasion. And I'm kind of overwhelmed by the same kind of inadequacy that generally prevented me from keeping in touch with my revered teachers, Shopunda, of course, as much as I would want to learn more. But so I'm inundated with memories of the many occasions, including the last time that I had the good fortune of meeting him in person. It was at the first of 3 lectures that he delivered at Presidency University. And I happened to attend the first. And I'll never forget the fact that he asked after my son, though he hadn't really heard from me about my son. And all the things that I've learned from him, right from my first undergraduate year, little things like how to cite a book. And I wish my friend and classmate Ranguna were here too. Our memories of the wonderful, enriching tutorial sessions, the work that we did under Shopunda's supervision, sorting books for the Department of English Library, the many kind of chance discussions we had at the library itself. Not to mention, I mean, it would be a litany of indebtedness. He was my referee, and he wrote me a most, the kindest letter of recommendation I could think of, and it enabled me to go abroad and study. So I can't even begin to talk about how much I owe Shopunda, and it's a tremendous wake-up call for me, because I realize all over again kind of persons I've been taught by, and how fortunate I am, and how much more I need to do to truly get to the point where I can pay homage to them. So I'll just try and I'll try and sing something. It's a hymn, it's a short one. I'm singing it because, maybe it will be an appropriate way of saying thank you. Tumi bondhu, tumi nathu, nishidino, tumi amaru, tumi bondhu, tumi nathu, nishidino, tumi amaru, tumi shukho, tumi shanti, tumi he amrita patharu, tumi bondhu, tumi nathu, nishedino, tumi amaru, tumi shukho, tumi shanti, তুমি হে অমৃত পাথারো, তুমি বন্ধু, তুমি নাথ নিষেদিন, তুমি আমার, তুমি তো আনন্দ লোক, জুড়াও প্রাণ নাশ শোক, তুমি তো আনন্দ লোক, জুড়াও প্রাণ নাশ শোক, তাপ হরণ তোমার চরণ অসীম শরণ দিন জনার, তুমি বন্ধু, তুমি নাথ নিষেদিন, তুমি আমার।
Right. Thank you so much, Maranadi. With that, we come to the end of this program. I'd like to thank all participants here who were for sharing their memories of Shapunda with us. And also, I would especially like to thank the team of the hosts today, particularly Dr. Rahi Soren from the Department of School of Oceanographic Studies, and Dr. Shantanu Maji, with whose help we were able to host this program on these parallel platform which made it possible for so many people to attend. And my colleagues, Dr. Toita Majumdar and Professor Sonia Sau for organizing this. And so Sonia would like to say a few words and then can close the program.
Yes, Rafat, thank you. And on behalf of the Department of English and SCTR-JU, I think we are really grateful that you all came along. And this is in fact a small effort from our end to pay homage to Shopunda's departed soul. And I'm sure that he will continue to live in us and through the kind of work that we do. Thank you so much for coming over today. Thank you.